Hello everyone! Journey Into Nyx spoiler season has just started, so I decided to make this new series called Spoiler Spotlight, where I go over some of the newly revealed cards, give my opinion on them, and maybe explore new deck ideas that might come up in the future. So let's get started. The first new keyword out of Journey Into Nyx is called Constellation. We have two cards with Constellation already, and they're all enchantment creatures, and it basically means whenever the enchantment creature or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, something special will happen. In the Naiad's case, it makes a creature unblockable until end of turn, but more excitingly for the Eidolon of Blossoms, you get to draw a card. And the Eidolon of Blossoms could maybe have some constructed applications, especially if you consider that Courser of Crufix and Boonsatyr, all playable cards, are both enchantment creatures, so they will trigger the Eidolon of Blossoms if they come into play after it. And even before Eidolon of Blossoms was revealed, I was already working on this green-white enchantment deck containing Courser of Crufix and Boonsatyr, so I'm very happy to see this new draw engine. And our next new keyword is called Strive, and it's a sort of multi-kicker. It appears on Ajani's Presence, and it's an instant. It makes a creature indestructible until end of turn and gives it +1/+1, but because it has a Strive, you can pay 2 and a white in addition to the 1 white to cast it, and for each 2 and a white you pay in addition, you get to target an additional creature, so it will trigger multiple heroic abilities. So if you want to target 2 creatures for instance, you will have to pay 2 and double white. If you want to target 3 creatures with this, you will have to pay triple white and 4. So it is a little expensive, but I like the versatility and the fact that it targets multiple heroic creatures. This won't be replacing Boros Charm anytime soon, but for limited it's a fine card and it's a good heroic enabler. After taking a small break, Monstrosity will return in Journey Into Nyx. We have one creature with Monstrosity revealed already. This one's a 2/4 Vigilance for 4 with Monstrosity 3 for the cost of 600 green. So for limited, a decent card, and I'm excited to see Monstrosity make a comeback. And of course, Heroic will also be returning. There are 2 creatures with Heroic revealed so far, one of them a little more exciting than the other. So there's not much to say here, so let's move on to the next mechanic, which is Scry. To no one's surprise, given that the 2 remaining temples are also in the set. And Patrick here looks like a fun card for limited. Something a little more exciting is Iroas, God of Victory. This is one of the 5 remaining multicolor gods in the set, and this one supports a nice aggressive creature based deck and doesn't combo particularly well with Boros Reckoner, in that it prevents damage from being dealt to Boros Reckoner when it's attacking, but on the other hand, Boros Reckoner does add 3 devotion to red and white, which means you only need 2 additional devotion to turn Iroas into a creature. I'm curious to see this god in action. I think he could fit nicely into a red devotion deck splashing white, or maybe even a white weenie deck splashing red. Either way, I think he'll see some play at least. And finally we get our 1-drop Minotaur, something we've been waiting for a while now. And this one's a 2/1 that can't block, but it's also an enchantment creature, and its bestow cost is 3 and a black, so you can even put this on your opponent's creatures in the late game, so they're unable to block, or you can just put this on your own creature to make it a little bit bigger. So my hopes are that Minotaurs might become a more competitive deck thanks to this 1-drop. A little thing to keep in mind though is that because it's black, the mana base in the Minotaur deck will be a little awkward. You might have to run those Rakdos Guild Gates in addition to the Temples and the Blood Crypts, just because you need black on turn 1 for this guy and double red on turn 3 for Rageblood Shaman, but these are minor details. Moving on, we have this pretty neat Anthem card that gives +1/+1 to all creatures you control of a chosen color, so this might enable some new strategies, like the mono black aggro deck could use this, or maybe even in combination with Master of Waves, because now the tokens will not die once the master leaves play, So a lot of things you can do with this, but keep in mind that this is a legendary artifact, so you can only have one of them in play at once. So my guess is that most decks that want this card will only be running 2 copies of them in the main deck. Next up is a sweeper in black, but it's not the most efficient one. For 6 mana you can destroy all non-enchantment creatures, so unless you build a deck around this where you have a lot of enchantment creatures and your opponent doesn't, I doubt that this will see a lot of play, maybe like 1 copy in some black control deck, but given that some enchantment creatures are quite popular like Courser of Crufix, this card seems a little awkward to me, but you never know. The picture is pretty cool though. Now let's take a look at some promo cards. Hero's Bane is gonna be the green pre-release card. Looks like a pretty scary Hydra. It can double its power and toughness every turn, starts out as a 4/4, and doesn't have trample though, so I doubt it will see any constructed play given that Colonian Hydra didn't. And Hall of Triumph will be the game day promo card that everyone receives if they participate. Now let's take a look at some additional cards that I would like to discuss. Dakra Mystic looks like an interesting card that could maybe replace the 1-drops in Mono Blue Devotion. It's pretty unlikely given that the flying on those cards is very important. It could have some other applications though, because if you combine it with Spirit of the Labyrinth and activate Dakra Mystic on the opponent's turn, the opponent will not be able to draw the additional card, and if you combine it with a Notion Thief, you get to draw the card instead. So nice combinations, and I'm curious to see where this goes. Squelching Leeches is another card that drew my attention. It's a card that requires a lot of swamps. The current mono black decks run a lot of Mutavaults and Temples, so maybe it doesn't fit right into that deck, but maybe it can spawn a new deck where it can combine nicely with Cryptcast that also requires a lot of swamps, or maybe even Liliana of the Dark Realms, who knows, but an interesting card nonetheless. So that's it for today. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next Spoiler Spotlight.